Good morning, evening. I've done, you can tell. If you can't, I'm going to tell you, I'm a nervous wreck. It does not pay. When I was standing down there Sunday morning, I told Linda, I said, I think I'll move that little podium I stand behind down here on the floor. And I was talking about, don't listen to the preacher, and that wasn't what I meant. And he poked his head out. And the telephone rang this evening when his dad had that heart attack. And pray for him. And Debbie and the grandkids, Jennifer and that family, and Brother John, remember them in your prayers. And anyway, I was out there on the golf cart, and I was tired of weed eating, so I was spraying. And when he said, Brother Jerry, he told me about his dad, and boy, that kind of tore me up. And then he said, I want you to preach tonight. I don't know what I sprayed after that. But I hope Brother Bob gets better soon, because I'm going to need somebody to re-sow my yard, probably. I got out there, and I have no idea. I got over out, and the handle hung. The sprayer stuck wide open. And I was going down beside the garage, and I was on that stupid golf cart and that sprayer, and I was thinking about preaching tonight. I don't know how much. I told Linda, I said, I don't know how much I sprayed. It just kept on. I finally jumped off the golf cart. I had enough sense to do that and unplugged it from the battery and got it cut off. But, boy, I tell you what, been an evening. Anyway, if you got your Bibles with you this morning, and you pray for me, God will help me, and turn to the book of Ecclesiastes. And I went in the house, and I guess I spent the rest of the evening trying to find something to speak on tonight. And I was in there for, I don't know, since from about 2 o'clock on, trying to look for something and praying and asking God to help me and give me a message for tonight. I thought about using my Sunday school lesson. I taught Sunday morning, and I jumped on that, and I didn't get any peace about that. So I had some notes of the years gone by. I've got hundreds of them, I guess. And so I reached over and grabbed me some and pulled them out, and I was going through them. And I finally got a little bit of peace about this. And so I want to talk to you about this tonight, Ecclesiastes. Chapter number 2, Ecclesiastes. You know, someone has said that this is a book of the natural man. And I'll probably go along with that. Vanity of vanities. That little term is used 28 times in this book. 28 times. Vanity of vanity. It means emptiness. It means no real worth. That's what it's talking about. And someone said the key verse in this book, if it has a key verse to it, would be found in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse number 12. For who knoweth what is good for a man in this life? All the days of his vain life, of his empty life, which he spendeth as a shadow. For who can tell a man what shall be after him under the sun? You know, we don't know what lies ahead of us. We may not be here tomorrow. We may not get to see the sun come up in the morning. That's why it pays to make sure tonight that if you don't get to see the sun in the morning, your heart's right. Your heart's right with God. And you'll know where you're going to spend eternity when you leave this life. And you need to know that. Man, do we ever need to know that. Life's short, death's sure. And we need to know that, folk. And Christians, we're saved by the grace of God. But you know something? When we leave this life, we're going to meet Him face to face. Will you be excited? Will you be ashamed? Will you be embarrassed? You know, we're going to be something. Ecclesiastes. Does this world satisfy? That's what I want to talk about. That's what Solomon here, I believe, is talking about. Some will try to find satisfaction in the things of this world. Boy, is the world not doing that today. I mean, you talking about looking for satisfaction in this world and trying to find happiness in this world. We got a society today that's geared toward it. I mean, they're doing everything within their power. They're going here, they're going there, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're spending money, and most of it is for pleasure. Trying to find something. Does this world satisfy? And Solomon here, he's going to talk to us a little bit about that. Look at verse number 1, chapter number 2, the book of Ecclesiastes. I said in my heart, go to, now I will prove thee with mirth. You know, I looked at that. I'll prove thee. Solomon says, the preacher says, I'll test thee with mirth. That means gladness. I'll test thee with pleasure. That implies that. It implies laughter. That little word. Some try to make their life in this world one big party. They think, man, if I can just have a good time, if I can go out here and I can throw a big party and have fun, man, I'm going to be the happiest guy on the block. Hey, you can live for pleasure if you want to, but I believe there was a fellow by the name of Timothy said, love not the world, neither the things that maybe that wasn't a hymn, but it was one of them. Anyway, pleasure, laughter, it's not going to satisfy. I mean, you can have fun, and I'm all for that. There's nobody likes to have fun and laugh and cut up any more than myself. But it's not going to satisfy that longing down in your soul. And we're trying to cover things up. We're just looking for something that'll satisfy that. We get happiness, anything. This world's one big party, some say, but there's no lasting value in mirth. There's none in pleasure. And there's no lasting value in it. Look what it says in verse number 3. Look at drop down to that verse. Solomon here, a man that's got it all. By the way, it literally got it all. He said, I sought in my heart to give myself to wine. He says, you know, boys, I think I'll try a little booze. He said, I sought in my heart to give myself to wine. I know, I got some family members that have sought in their heart in days gone by to give themselves to wine. I know what liquor can do. I've seen it. I know what wine and beer and alcohol can do. We've got Christians nowadays think it's okay to take a sociable drink. We got a God in heaven that don't agree with that. We got a Bible right here that don't agree with that. Hey, so, I've seen my grandpa, Darnell. I remember this. I used to go up to Elkin. He lived in Wilkes County, talking about wine and liquor and alcohol. And my grandpa, Wilkes County is known for bootlegging whiskey. It's known for white lightning. And man, I went up there and I saw him, my grandpa. I never will forget it. I guess maybe I was in the 5th grade in school, something like that. And I might not have even been that. But we would go up on the Saturday, spend the night, and come back on Sunday evening. And I remember Grandpa, he was drunk. He'd been drinking old white liquor. And I remember him, he was sitting down there and they had a chicken yard. They didn't have much. They didn't even have running water. They had electricity. They didn't have an inside bathroom. Didn't have an outside bathroom as far as that goes. But I remember him sitting down there at that fenced-in chicken place. Sitting in there, and you know what he was doing? I never will forget it. He was eating chicken dung. Too drunk to know what he was doing. I got another uncle. Man, he had a great job. When I graduated from high school, he said, Jerry, I was telling somebody the other day, I don't remember who it was, he had I believe it was an Eldorado Cadillac. He said, Jerry, for your graduation present, No, it was a Cadillac. It was a Coupe de Ville. That's what it was. And it was kind of a cream colored and something burgundy or something, maybe a little pink. I don't know. But anyhow, he said, Jerry, for your graduation, he said, buddy, I'm going to let you have this Cadillac and you can go anywhere you want to go to it in Winston-Salem tonight. I jumped in that Cadillac. I thought, man, I might pick me up a girlfriend. I was all over Winston-Salem by myself, driving that Cadillac. Boy, I felt good. And he'd trade cars every year. But liquor got the best of him. He thought maybe a sociable drink. Then he thought, well, you know, I can drink my whiskey. He'd go to the store. He got so drunk he went up underneath his house and built a campfire. There wasn't no basement there either. Solomon said, I'll try everything. My uncle, he lost his wife, he lost his job, he lost all his cars, he lost his money. Finally, he lost his health. And he got saved about 7 years before he died, give his heart to Jesus. And he was a witness everywhere he went. Mom and Daddy, they witnessed to him. He got saved. But you know, when he got saved, he didn't have any health. Old Solomon here said, I'll try some wine. Hey, it didn't satisfy. Notice where he goes on down through these verses here. And I'm going to, what time is it? 7:35. Look at verse number 4. Look at verse. He says, I made me great works. I built me great works. He went out there. He had the money and the means to whereby that he could build anything he wanted to build. He was a man of means by, what is it Roger says, by no means at all. He had it. He had it. That old boy, he made business deals. He built houses. He had a vineyard. It tells us there in verse number 4. He had all these things. He was looking, the preacher, there in Ecclesiastes, the preacher or Solomon, hey, he was looking for something to satisfy that longing down in his soul. What do you think it's going to do? You think it's going to satisfy? Huh? You think it will? Never has before. Why should it for him? Hey, but notice it goes on, look at verse 5. Look what it says. He says, I made me some gardens and orchards. I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruit. He said, hey man, I went out there and planted a big orchard. I remember my grandpa Beeson, when I was a boy, we used to go over there, and grandpa had a big old apple orchard. I remember that because there was a apple tree in there that had June apples on it. Boy, those things make really good apple pies, and they're pretty good for eating about June. When they come in, I'd go up there and get it and get a dose of poison oak, go right along with it. And, but you know something? We'd go out there, and we went down there. He had black heart cherries. He had red heart cherries. He had sour cherries. I remember just as plain crawling up in that old cherry tree and sitting up there eating them black heart cherries. Man, them things was good. I'd go down there in the other lot and eat those red heart cherries. And those sour cherries made good pies. Grandma Beeson made them with the seeds in it, and every time you eat a piece of cherry pie, you had to spit a seed. I mean, she had seeds and all those things. It was eat a cherry pie and spit a seed, eat a cherry pie and spit a seed. Hey, she done all, and boy, it was good though. And you know what? Old Solomon here, he had all that. Had every bit of it. I mean, he's got it, boy. He's looking, hey, will the world satisfy? That's what we're talking about. But let's go on here just for a few minutes. Look what he says. Look at verse number 6. He says, I made me some pools of water. Now, you say, well, I got a swimming pool in my backyard. My soul, Solomon had that some 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. You ain't got nothing on him. I made me pools of water to water therewith the wood and bringeth forth trees. Hey, he even had pools to water his crops. Irrigation, all the way back in his day. He had that. And we talk about, you know, even the book of Genesis, I'll just throw this in passing while I'm up here. You know, sometimes we say, you ever heard the term caveman? Well, you know something? Adam was smart enough to name all the animals. That don't sound much like a caveman to me. And old Solomon here, he started the irrigation in a swimming pool in his backyard some 2,000 or 3,000, 6,000 years ago, 4,000 anyway. Hey, that don't sound much like a caveman. Somebody ought to change their teaching on evolution. But be that as it may, we'll just run it by. Verse 7, look at it. He goes on. He says, hey, ladies, you ought to like this. Look at this. I got me some servants and maidens and had servants born in my house. Also, I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. He had servants, he had maids, he had great possessions. All the wives, all those wives. How many was it? If I'm not mistaken, was it 3,000 wives? Is that right, Jim? I believe it was. 3,000 wives and 300 girlfriends. And they call him a man of wisdom. I want to tell you something. Wisdom. Now, Solomon was a wise man, and God gave him wisdom. But Solomon didn't always use the wisdom that God gave him in the right way. If he had, he wouldn't have had no 1,000 women married to, and then they caused him to fall away from God because of all their false idols that he was falling down worshiping to. He said, well, Solomon was a wise man. In some things he was. But I'm not joking. You get back and you study the life. Hey, some things he didn't use his wisdom that God gave him, just like you and I. God's give us a lot of things to use that we don't use in the proper way. Amen? He's given us some wisdom. He's told us to go soul winning, go be a witness, study his word to be approved. But boy, we sure don't follow all that. But hey, let's go. And so he had servants, he had maidens. Ladies, they didn't have to lift their finger to do one thing. If you would have been Solomon's wife, you could just snap your finger and bring me a cup of coffee and a donut, you know. Boy, wouldn't that have been nice? You snap your finger down to that old man of yours and I don't know what happened. But anyway, I'm not trying to turn this thing into a commercial comedian's time. But anyway, look at this. Look at the next one. Look at verse number 8. He says, I gathered me also silver and gold and the peculiar treasures of kings and of providences. He says, look at this. I got me some men singers. I got me some women singers and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments and that of all sorts. He didn't have to plug in a CD. He had a group maybe like the Primitives or the Inspirations or some of those. He had all kinds of singers, Jim. I mean, he had them right there in his palace. Jennifer, he could just call all those singers in. He's looking for something to satisfy this longing down in his soul. Don't forget that. That's what he's looking for. Hey, just let me throw this out in passing. What are you looking for tonight that'll satisfy a longing down in your soul? Solomon was trying everything under the sun. And buddy, he had the means and the ways and the money to do it. There's a verse down here, and we're going to get to in just a moment. I've always fascinated me. I read that verse. Every time I read it, I thought, man, can't believe that. Let's look at that. We'll get there in just a minute. So here he is. He had servants. He had all this stuff, and he's trying to be satisfied. He says, I got me some silver and gold and peculiar treasures. I got me some men singers and so on and so forth there in that verse. And then when we get over to verse number, let me get this out of the way. Verse number 9, look what he says. He says, so I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom will remain with me. He had more material things than anyone that had before him, including King David, including the first king, which was Saul, and then including all those other judges that came before him. He had more materialistic things than anybody. If anybody's going to be satisfied with material things, surely to goodness, it's going to be Solomon. Wouldn't you think so? Well, don't sit there. Wouldn't you think so? Bump your head, do something. But notice that verse right there. He had more material things. He also had wisdom, wise in mind. He knew how to get things done. He knew what he had. He was a knowing man. He was an intelligent man. Wrote many proverbs. Wrote this book. It goes on. Look at verse number 10. We're going to get out of here early tonight. And whatsoever mine eyes, this verse right here. Boy, if there's ever a verse in the Bible that really rests his mind, listen to what this guy said. Look at this. Look at this. Whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy. Look at that. For my heart rejoiced in all my labors, and all this was my portion of all my, and this was my portion of all my labors. That first part of that verse, whatsoever mine eyes desired. Is anybody in here can say that? If I saw a new Rolls Royce going down the street and I wanted it, Solomon said, it's mine. If I saw a pretty woman, she's mine. Hey, anything I looked at, that I saw, that I wanted, I got, surely to God this man would be, hey, if anything like that, if materialism can satisfy my soul, this ought to be the happiest guy in the world. Are you trying to get satisfied with material things? Huh? Boy, here's a guy, hey, he was after it. You reckon it's going to work for him? I guess that's the bottom line. Well, Solomon, is it working? How's he making? How you making out with that? Well, let's read on and see if we can find out how it's working for Mr. Solomon, the king. So, nothing left for him to desire as far as material things went. Would you not say that? If he could have anything he saw with his eye, there's nothing left. He can have it all. And he could. He had means whereby and authority that he could. You know, look at verse number 11. So, whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not anything. He takes inventory. When you get down to verse, no, I read the wrong verse. Verse 11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought. Remember, verse number 10. I withheld anything I saw, I got. Now we get down to verse number 11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought. He now takes inventory of all he has. He's going to look at it. He said, and he wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Can you believe that? He said, in taking inventory of all he has, when he gets through with his inventory, he said all was vain. All was emptiness. All you get in this world is, by the way, temporary. Temporary. And here's a man that found that out. He tried it. He said, it's so, for just a few months, everything you get in this world, you may have it a few months. At the best, you couldn't have it. You're probably not going to have it over a few years, maybe 100. Grandma Beeson, I think she was 103 when she passed away. But the last 3 or 4 years of her life, she went blind when she was in her 80s. She had to depend on somebody else. One thing she never lost was her mind. She told me, she said, Jerry, when I got saved when I was 16, and I started praying as a youth. In her teenage years, teenagers, she started praying. You know what she asked God for? She didn't ask him for money. She didn't ask him. Grandpa died at 70. She never had to work a day in her life. She lived to be 103. You know what she said she asked God for? She said, God, let me keep my mind. Let me keep my mind. When she died at 103, you can ask any of the family. She knew everybody in it. We wanted to know anything. Grandma, who's so-and-so? Oh, that's this and blah. She knew them all. I remember when grandkids would go, and Linda and I was married, and we'd go and they'd walk up and sit down, and she couldn't see. They'd sit down beside Grandma, sit there on the porch beside of her, and in the summertime, and I never will forget this, I was sitting there and watched her. She'd reach over there, them girls would come over and sit beside of her. She'd take her hand and she'd reach over and she'd pop them on the leg. About all them girls had on short shorts. Grandma didn't agree with short shorts. She'd slap them on the leg. Where's your dress, girl? Well, Grandma, it's summertime and I got on short shorts and we're this and that. You need some clothes on, girl. You know, Grandma was kind of the old school. But she asked God, and God honored that request. You know, Grandma never got mad. She was a good grandma. Made the best biscuits I ever put in my mouth. Grandpa would go down there and he had beehives. Get that honey and put it on them biscuits. And all the cow butter we had, they had cows, and so they made their own butter. They had cream, they had all that stuff. They didn't have to go buy none of it. Man, you smear that old butter on there and pour that honey on there. Get that hot biscuit. Man, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, but notice here. So let me read verse 11 again. Done read it, but let me read it again. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and all the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity. All was empty. Nothing there. And vexation of spirit. And there was no profit under the sun. Drop over, look with me at verse number 18, this same chapter. Yea, I hated all my labors which I had taken under the sun. He come to a point in his life, he says it just wouldn't do him any good. I hate it because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. Who's coming after you, Solomon? Well, his son that followed him on the throne lost all the tribes but except 2 or 3, I believe. What was it? Judah and maybe Benjamin, and lost them all. That's what happened to the guy that followed him. All these things that you're storing up, all these things that we're packing back, all these things we're looking after and working so hard to obtain, if it's not of God, we're going to leave it behind. Amen. And the fellow that inherits it, it was his son. He blew it. He blew it. Lost 10 tribes there. Well, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom. He blew it. Hey, church, God's been good to us. Give us a good preacher. Hey, he's been real good. Financially, he's been good to us. But let's put God first. Hey, that verse, look at verse number 19, just following that. He says, and who knoweth whether he shall be the guy that's going to inherit what you've got and what I've got and what we've got when we die and leave this life? Look what he said. Who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labors wherein I've labored and wherein I've showed myself wise under the sun. This is also vanity. All we're working for and hoarding up, we're going to leave to somebody else. Fellas, wouldn't it be something? You and I go out here and make $100,000, for instance, and we're going to leave it to our lovely, lovely wife. And she gets all sidetracked, and goes out here and marries a bum. And he blows it all. And there we was trying to, hey, I want to tell you something. Be careful what you do. I'm in favor of, hey, I want to leave if I go before my wife, I want to leave her as well off as possible. I mean that. I do. And hope I can. And I'm sure you feel the same way. But you might have a boy or a girl that's going to blow it all. And you know what you can do about it? Nothing. You can't do a thing. Why? Oh, you're going to be in heaven or hell, but you're going to be 6 foot under. So the Lord, hey, you know something, folks? He labored like a dog. He worked hard. And he left it all behind. You know, we ought to put Jesus first in our life. He needs to be number one. I'm about through right now. Let's just finish up here in just for a minute. So at verse 19. Also, turn with me to chapter 12 of this book. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. We're going to finish up. Done covered the whole book. Turn to chapter 12. Let's look with me. Remember, teenagers, if you're in here, and most of them's outside, young folks, young married, whatever. You know, that verse number 1 there, chapter 12, says, remember now thou Creator in the days of thy youth. That's good advice. If you're in here and you're a young couple, put God first. Amen. Amen. Hey, put Him first in your life. Let those kids see Christ in you. Put Him first. You won't regret that. I know some things I'd like to say right now with this, but I can't. I can't. I promised I wouldn't. But I want to tell you something. While we're still able, we need to make sure that we put God first. We need to just get in the book, stay in the book, get in church, be faithful, do what thus saith the Lord God. Read and study God's Word. Because all that you can, some of us, I remember when I was retiring, I heard some of those guys, they said, Jerry, here's what they told me. They said, we're going to work every Saturday and every Sunday that we can possibly work because we're going to build our retirement up. I said, I'm going to get off every Saturday and every Sunday I can possibly get off because I'm going to work a bus route. I was working a bus route, and I did. I remember coming in there, Reynolds come to me one time, and they said, Jerry, it's mandatory that you work Sunday. I said, I got some sick days, and I'll take them. They said, we're not letting nobody take sick days. I said, you're not? I said, I got a vacation day, and I'll take that. They said, we're not letting nobody take vacation days. You're going to work Sunday. I said, okay. Boy, I'd never worked Sunday in my life. I'm not coming down on anybody in here who works Sunday. If you do, that's between you and God. And that's between, your boss may let you, may make you, I don't know. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying God will help you if you'll put Him first. And maybe you're still putting Him first. I don't know why I'm telling it, but I'm going to tell it anyway, okay? And so it went on, and the rest of the day, I was moping around there because I had to work on Sunday. I didn't even like working Saturday. In fact, I never did get used to Friday. And so I'd go around there, and I went up there, and I remember one of them boys, the old boy in there, he was my friend, but he liked his liquor pretty good, and I was going to get some off of him if I had to work on Sunday, I figured, but no, lying. But he come up to me and he said, Jerry, did you hear the word a while ago? I said, what word's that? He said, they letting that Seventh-day Adventist over there off. I said, what'd you say? He said, they're letting that Seventh-day Adventist off. I said, they are. He said, yep, you got to work, ain't you? I said, well, we'll see. I marched my little self right up there to the office, told my supervisor, I said, hey, Hal, you make me an appointment out in the main office with the man ahead of Whitaker Park. I believe it was Jim Wilson or Kennedy one at that time. He said, why? I said, because I've asked off on Sunday. They won't let me off. I said, but they just told me there's a Seventh-day Adventist lady, and I knew her. I knew who she was. I'd witnessed to her. There's a Seventh-day Adventist, and they're going to let her off on Saturday. I said, you make me an appointment out there in that front office. If they're going to let her off on Saturday, they're going to let me off on Sunday, or we're going to find out why. He said, okay, Jerry. He come back about an hour, he met me. I was going to one of my favorite hangouts called the break room. And he met me going down the hall, and he said, Jerry? I said, yeah. He said, you don't have to work Sunday. I said, thank you, Hal. You know, God can, he can intervene for us. Put him first. Let me read you, and I'm closing. Look at the last two verses in chapter number 12. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment, and every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Matthew 6:33, and I'll close. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things that we're going after will be added unto us. First, we need to put God first in our life. We put him first. We seek his will for our life. I promise you, you put him first. You honor God, he'll bless you.